right, so I've got it all traced. I'm gonna hold it in one spot and just lift it around the edges. Make sure I got the majority of it. And I do. You can see up here, I missed some of my lines, but when you get to where I'm at with my experience, I kind of know how to fill it in without it. So I just go ahead and do that. One thing that's really important, when you have lines within your drawing, your sketch, and then you've got an edge line, I roughly traced in the outside of this lightning bolt, but I'm not necessarily going to follow this line. I'm going to take this compass and line it up close here to this line, and then I'm going to go in and draw it across here. And because I want to make sure that that line is parallel. The rest is less important. This line's not so important, this line's not so important, but this line here is so close to the edge that if they're not parallel, it's going to draw the attention away from your drawing and bring it right up here. And as I'm looking at this, there's kind of some empty space in here, so I might just draw a little moon here. That's kind of my go-to. I love moons. I constantly am drawing like nighttime scenes, so that's just sort of my thing. Yeah, that's and that's okay. My sketch, this is why I don't sell a lot of patterns, because oftentimes my pattern is just a really loose template of what I'm gonna do. Because you can see these flowers here don't really look a whole lot like they do down here, traced, and they're gonna look even more different when I get to it. And that's just because this doesn't always look like how it's gonna look here, really. But anyway, I've got my pattern traced here, and now I'm going to add in my border. You always wanna leave about a 1/4 inch off the edge for sewing, or for your stitching line. I don't like to let my tooling pattern come all the way up to that sewing line. And there's a few, ways you can go about adding a border here. For this piece, I am gonna do it just like this. So, and it'll make sense here in a minute. But I'm gonna skip towards the center here, and you'll see why in a moment, and continue across. And you can decide if your line is gonna cross your tooling, if you're gonna allow the line to kind of cancel that out, or if you're gonna let the piece come in front of it to create some depth. So then I'm gonna twist this again, because I'm gonna create this type of border with a single line here. And I leave myself a lot of room here in the middle, and you'll see why when I get to it in a second. So here I have the choice to let the flower come to the front, so I skipped over it and then continued on. Now, for these two center lines to really divide this up, I'm gonna take out my ruler, and I'm gonna find where I want my outside line to be. I'm gonna use the ruler to make sure it's fairly perpendicular. And then I'm gonna take my stylus and connect it all the way to the bottom line, and then move it in so that it matches. And here I'm gonna lift over my design and let the line be behind the design. And now I'm gonna measure the distance from the outside line to the edge. That's about 7 inches. So I'm gonna take it over here and do the same thing here to make sure that the front and the back match. And you can see here I actually took my line a little too far. That's okay. You can kind of buff that out in your tooling. And they don't have to be perfect, because this is going to be closed. No one's going to be looking at it open like this, but you want to get it close. So this is really the binding edge, and then I've got my back and my front. You can see it's really wet here in the middle. This is too wet right here to tool, but over here is nice. So I am not one to, wait till it's uniform, so I'll start tooling over here and slowly work my way over here to the wet spot. I might jump over here. But now it's time to get to tooling. I have recently sharpened this blade, and I like to look along the edge here, and you can see it's not, I don't know if you can see in this video, it's no longer symmetrical on the edges because I've been using this blade for a while, but I like to run my hand over the top of it, and when you get a new blade, I recommend doing that so you can kind of feel how it should feel when it's nice and sharp, but I can feel it kind of grabbing my finger. I've already stropped it off camera, but I'll show you guys again. This is just a scrap piece of leather. I rubbed some rouge on, and you want to take it perpendicular, or not perpendicular, but at a 30-degree angle to it so that the blade is parallel and you're stropping it. You don't want to be super light. There is some pressure here, more than holding a pen, but I'm not digging it in and pushing it in because you can roll the edge of the blade that way. So here I am doing that, and I flick off the extra rouge, and I am ready to go. If you feel like when you go to carve it's really difficult, it's really hard on your wrist, try re-wetting the leather and letting it dry a little bit again. It sometimes is that the leather is not damp enough below, and so you're trying to carve dry leather, and that's going to be really hard. One piece of advice too is I'm going to start over here, but I'm also going to work from front to back as far as the image goes. So the very front of this is the horse, really, and then I've got this flower, and then I would have this scroll work, and then this lightning bolt, and then the scene in the back is like the furthest back, besides these mountains peeking up. You're going to also tool with your stamps and beveling the same way, front to back. So I'm going to go ahead and get started, and at another time I will go over the real intricacies of tooling and get into it more, but you hold your tooling knife like this. I like to use my ring finger to stabilize right down here, right next to the blade. I like to spin with my middle finger and my thumb, and then I hold my pointer finger on the top to apply pressure. You don't want to choke up here, and you don't want to be way out here. I find that on that center between the two joints on your finger is really the ideal spot. For me, it's closer up to the edge, but for some people it might be a little further down here, and for others it might be here, depending on the size of your hand. You can also get different size, like diameters of this part, and you want most of your pressure to be coming down from your finger, or from your index finger, and then the control comes from here. I really like this ring finger way down here. It really, really helps stabilize so that you have control when you're tooling. The other thing is when you put your piece on your leather, you have the point farthest away from you down. You're not going like this, and you're not straight down. It is a slight angle. And the harsher the angle, the deeper you're going to go, the less control you're going to have. And then same thing here. This is going to look real jagged, be real difficult. You want to find that sweet spot. I find right about here, not 45, maybe 60, 70 degrees. That's where I like to hold it. So now I'm just going to get started. I'm going to pick a spot. And when you lift up, you really kind of want to be wispy about it so that you've got this edge here. You're not just stopping and lifting and then you have a harsh mark there. You can always go back and reinsert your knife into your divot that you cut to make that look better. And again, I'm not following my stencil line exactly. I am letting this blade here tell me what it wants. And this here, I missed tooling, and this is part of the flower, not the tail. The tail's over here, so that's a little confusing. But yeah, you really want to be mindful of what you are carving. Don't just follow the lines, but think about what part of the design you're actually carving. That helps you to not get lost, especially when it comes to scroll work. Learning to just read scroll work is a challenge, but once you learn how to read it, that is where you'll find that you're drawing your own scroll work, and being able to follow a pattern gets a lot easier. If you don't even know what you're reading, it gets really easy to misdraw your lines, and that's where I see a lot of beginners making mistakes. I will also avoid going and doing my straight lines until the end when I can get a ruler out. That's just my preference. Again, you can see here, I'm not exactly following my lines on the flowers. On the horses and things where the anatomy matters more, yes, I do follow my lines fairly closely. But flowers are organic, so we let them do what they want. I'm also always going top to bottom with my pole. You're never gonna go bottom to top like this. That's not gonna work. You're always top to bottom, and you're always kind of pulling it towards you. You're never pulling it away from you. Yeah. And you also want to fill in as much space as you really can. So I've got blank space here and here that when I go to finish this piece, I'm gonna need to fill that in really. I like to fill that in with little swirls. You could add more flowers. I could use a border stamp. But you want to make sure you don't have these big awkward blank spaces later. So I'm going to keep tooling this, and I will come back to you guys when it's time for the next steps.